Hey YouTube, Friendo here. So TheStigmadeign wants to know what would change about my life if I suddenly came to believe in God. Um, the first thing I want to point out, so I think this is kind of a flaw in the premise of the question, is that I used to believe in God. I was raised Catholic. I went to church. I prayed. I went to confession. I took communion. I believed. So for me, believing in God would be a step backwards. It would be going into the mental and spiritual framework of my youth. And that's all, there's a lot of baggage there that I put behind me. But for the premise of this question, I will assume that this would be a step forward for me, that who I am today, this older, wiser, handsomer man, everything that I've learned about myself, other people, in the world, this person comes to believe in God. However that is. The evidence is there, the spiritual commitment is there, and the personal awareness and understanding is there. I come to understand that God exists. Now, this would not change the way I live very much. To be perfectly honest with you, I would still drink, which I do socially, not all the time. I would still gamble as rarely as I gamble. I would have sexual relations with women with about the same frequency that I do, which is not all that often, but which is done without any concern for long-term monogamy. However, I would pray on a consistent basis, and I would accept Jesus Christ. I mean, we're assuming for this thought experiment that it is your God, the God that you believe in, that we're talking about. So yes, I would accept Jesus. Now, how it would affect the trajectory of my life, how it would affect my life mission, what would change fairly drastic about me would be how I would approach other believers, other religious people. Because right now, I am fairly tolerant. I won't speak for any other atheist, but I am tolerant of religion, people's beliefs, because I just don't care. Whatever it is that you or anyone else does to pray to invisible beings in another dimension, in the sky, in fire, whatever it is you envision, I don't care. Any more than I care about what people fantasize about when they're having sex. It's just stuff going on in your head. But if I knew that God was real and God wanted us to worship Him, then I would care. It would make a big difference to me. But my target wouldn't be atheists. The numbers just aren't there. Atheism is a very small part of a very small part of the overall population. Additionally, assuming that revelations are currently coming true, and there's not a lot of time left in the world, atheists aren't going to have the ability to do much damage. The Catholic Church can do a lot of damage. The American Baptist Assembly can do a lot of damage. So on and so forth. Evangelicals in America can do a lot of damage. I would try to get in communion with God to get an idea of, in addition to my own personal commitments, what it is, what strands of religion in the world are the least faithful, the most hypocritical, and the most odious. Because I take that from the Gospels. What really upset Jesus, what really got him going, what elicited an outburst of righteous violence was people sullying the house of God, going into the places where people worshipped and turning them into brothels, places of commerce, the cheapening of religion and the worshiping God. Well, it sickens me now. If I believed that God really existed and really cared, it would infuriate me. That would be the righteous indignation that I would feel. And I would not be on the fence. I would be out on a mission to cleanse the temple. If I knew for a fact that God was real. That's what I feel. That's what I feel compelled to say. Perhaps God would turn me away from this path. Perhaps my communion with God would put me in a different frame of mind. But for the purpose of this thought experiment, I'm also playing God. And this is consistent with how I read the Bible. The real odious sin is that of hypocrisy. And I wouldn't tolerate it. I wouldn't allow it. And I think that would be the surest way for me to be martyred. The death would come at the hand of other Christians, other believers. And living in a biblical end times, that would be the sweetest. I would die before the tribulations. I would go straight to heaven. I would know that I was counted among the righteous because I was put to death for my devotion and love of God. So I hope you find the answer that I gave illuminating, TheStigmadeign, as well as anyone else who is watching. Thank you for following me in this little thought experiment.